Good morning, students. Today we will discuss the 8th class CBSE history chapter, Civilizing the Native, Educating the Nation. The Native, Educating the Nation. In our previous videos, we have discussed about the impact of British rule in India in reference to economic and political sector. So in this particular chapter, we will understand what implications British rule had for the lives of the students in India. The British wanted not only territorial conquest and control over revenues, or we can say economic system, they also felt that they had a cultural mission. Why did they think about to have a cultural mission? Because they thought that they had to civilize the native by providing them English education and by changing their customs and values. According to them, Indians were savage and barbarous, and only British culture could civilize them. So this will be seen in this chapter, like what changes were to be introduced by British people, how were Indians to be educated and civilized and made into what the British believed were good subjects. Although the Britishers could not find simple answers to these questions, that's why they continued to be debated for many decades. But they introduced a new education system in India by which they could civilize Indians, they could civilize native people of India. Because according to them, Indian education was full of mistakes, full of errors, and we can say it was continuously increasing the darkness among the minds of Indians. That's why they thought that they had to introduce a new education system. They had to civilize the native, and they have to uh, they have to introduce Western culture, and by this they could make Indian people civilized. So basically, in this chapter we will discuss about first how the British saw the education, how the British saw the education. Basically, this topic will be discussed under some subparts also, like the tradition of orientalist, the tradition of orientalism, and in this tradition of orientalism, we will have a glance on some orientalist, like we will study about William Jones, Colebrooke, and Nathaniel. After it, we will see like British would become guardians as well as masters. After it, we will discuss about the grave errors of the East, and in this portion, in this the grave errors of the East, we will see the viewpoint of James Mill and Thomas Babington Macaulay. After it, we will discuss about education for commerce, and in education for commerce, we will discuss about Macaulay minutes, and after it, Wood's dispatch. After this first subpart, how the British saw the education, we will discuss about second part, that is what happened to the local schools. What happened to the local schools, And basically in this part we will see the report of William Adam, who was a missionary and who sent to observe the education system in India. William Adam. And after it we will see the new routines and new laws which were implemented by British. New routines and new laws. These new routines and new laws were introduced by British to improve the education system in India. And after it we will see the last and third point of this chapter, that is the agenda for a national education. The agenda for a national education. And basically in this agenda we will see the viewpoint of two famous personalities. The one is Mahatma Gandhi and the other one is Rabindranath Tagore. Viewpoint of Mahatma Gandhi, and after it Rabindranath Tagore. At first we will discuss about how British saw education. British tried to change India's education system, and the ideas of education that we now take for granted developed in the last 200 years, and it had a great history behind its progress, behind its development. But before discussing the protest and view of Indians, how Indians were to be educated, we will discuss about the tradition of orientalism. Before discuss the tradition of orientalism, at first I want to discuss the meaning of orientalist. Basically we have two types of tradition, two types of British thinkers. The one is orientalist, the other one is Anglicist. The tradition of orientalist. Before discussing this tradition, we will understand the meaning of orientalism or orientalist. As I have told you, like there are two types of viewpoint, there are two types of British thinkers. The one is orientalist and the other one is Anglicist. What is the difference between orientalist and Anglicist? Actually, the person with a scholarly knowledge of the language and culture of East, or we can say the followers of the culture and language of Asia, were known as orientalist. Followers of culture and language of Asia were known as orientalist, and William Jones was one of them. The second is Anglicist, just opposite, the followers of culture and language of Western world, like Macaulay, James Mill. In Orientalist, William Jones was one of the famous British who arrived to Calcutta in 1783. So, at first we will discuss about the major Orientalists, and at first we will discuss about William Jones. He
was appointed as a junior judge at the Supreme Court, which was established by the company. He was an expert in law, and besides of being an expert in law, he was a linguist also. Now the question arises, who can be termed a linguist? The person who knows and studies several languages is known as linguist. William Jones
could speak so many languages like he had studied Greek and Latin at Oxford. He knew French and English, had picked up Arabic from a friend, and had also learned Persian. At Calcutta, he began spending many hours a day with pundits who taught him sub, who taught him Sanskrit language, grammar, and poetry. William Jones arrived at Calcutta in 1783. As a junior judge, expert in law, a linguist also, as he knew so many languages like Persian, Arabic, Greek, Latin, French, English, and Sanskrit also. Soon he was studying about ancient Indian texts on law, philosophy, religion, politics, morality, arithmetic, medicine, and other sciences. He did many efforts to promote Indian education and to promote Indian culture so that Indians could aware about their rich culture. He was a follower of Asiatic culture. That's why he was termed as orientalist, or we can say, being an orientalist, he wanted to promote Asiatic culture. He wanted to promote Asiatic education. The second person is Thomas Colebrooke. Later on, William Jones discovered that his interests were also shared by many British officials living in Calcutta at that time. Englishmen like Henry Thomas Colebrooke and Nathaniel Hallett were also busy discovering the ancient Indian heritage. They were the master of Indian languages, and they started to translate Sanskrit and Persian works into English. Henry Thomas Colebrooke was a scholar of Sanskrit and ancient sacred writings of Hinduism, and together with Henry Thomas Colebrooke and Nathaniel Hallett, William Jones set up the Asiatic Society of Bengal, and he also started a journal called Asiatic Researches. Thomas Colebrooke, master of Indian languages, started to translate Persian and Sanskrit work into English. William Jones, Thomas Colebrooke, and Nathaniel Hallett established Asiatic Society of Bengal, and they also started a journal called Asiatic Researches. Jones and Colebrooke came to represent a particular attitude towards India. They shared a deep respect for ancient culture, both of India and the West. They felt that Indian civilization had attained its glory in the ancient past, but it had subsequently declined. So, in order to understand India, in order to understand India, it was necessary to discover the sacred and legal texts that were produced in the ancient period. For only those texts could reveal the real ideas and laws of the Hindus and Muslims, and only a new study of these texts could form the basis of future development in India. It means they wanted to attain, they wanted to regain the glory of India which was gained by India in its past. That's why they started to study Indian scripts and Indian texts so that they could reveal the rich heritage of Indian culture. Now we'll discuss about our second subpart, that is British would become guardians as well as masters. British guardians as well as masters. Actually, Britishers were considered guardians because of orientalists, whereas they were considered masters because of Anglicists like Macaulay and James Finn. How can we say that Britishers were the guardians of Indian culture? As I have told you earlier, Jones and Colebrooke went about discovering ancient texts. They started to understand the meaning of Indian texts. They started to translate them and making their findings known to others. They believe, according to them, or we can say they believed that this project would not only help the British to learn from Indian culture, but it would also help Indians to rediscover their own heritage. Like they wanted to promote Indian education so that India could regain its glory. That's why they started to protect Indian culture, they started to protect the education system in India. In this process, the British would become the guardians of Indian culture, whereas many British officials began to criticize the Orientalist vision of learning. They said that the knowledge of the East was full of errors and unscientific thoughts. That's why they wanted to impose British culture, they wanted to impose Western education. They wanted to impose those new laws which were according to them. And in this process, English became the masters of Indian education. So we can say at the same time, Britishers were playing both the roles like guardians as well as masters. Influenced by such ideas, many company officials argued that the British ought to promote Indian rather than Western learning. They felt that institutions should be set up to encourage the study of ancient Indian texts, and Britishers should teach Sanskrit and Persian literature and poetry. The officials also thought that Hindus and Muslims ought to be taught what they were familiar with, what they valued and treasured, not subjects that were alien to them. Here the term alien was used for the Western subjects because Western subjects were not familiar for Indians, and according to Orientalists and the followers of Orientalists, the education should be provided in which subject in which languages which were familiar for Indian people. According to Orientalists, British hoped to win a place in the hearts of the natives, and only then would the alien rulers expect to be respected by their subjects. Because according to them, by using power, by using new rules and regulations, they could not generate respect in the minds of Indians. So, according to Orientalists, if Britishers wanted to get respect from the Indians, then they had to make a place in the hearts of the natives. With this object, a madrasa was set up in Calcutta in 1781 to promote the study of Arabic, Persian and Islamic law. And the Hindu college was also established in Banaras in 1791 to encourage the study of ancient Sanskrit texts. So we can say Orientalist established madrasa in 1781 in Calcutta, and this was established to promote the study of Persian and Islamic law, whereas a Hindu college was also established by them in 1791 in Banaras, and it was also established to encourage the study of ancient Sanskrit texts. Do you know what is madrasa? Actually, it is an Arabic word for a place of learning. Any type of school and colleges, it is an Arabic word that is used for the place of learning, whether it is a school or college. So by establishing these kind of institutions like madrasa and Hindu college in Banaras, orientalists became the guardians of Indian education and Indian culture, or we can say Asiatic culture. Whereas by imposing new laws, by implementing new rules, Anglicists became the masters of Indians. In our next video, we will see the great errors of the East and education for commerce also.